The wolves appeared on the third night of the blizzard, when the temperature plummeted to 20 below, and the wind howled like a wounded thing against my cabin windows. I was watching the ancient wood-burning stove struggle against the cold, nursing a mug of whiskey-laced tea between my palms, when something crashed against my front door. Not knocked. Crashed. I nearly scalded myself as hot liquid sloshed over my fingers. The sound came again, a heavy thud followed by what I could only describe as a whimper. Animal, not human. My first winter alone in my grandmother's abandoned cabin had already tested me in ways I never anticipated. The isolation, the crushing silence that sometimes felt loud enough to split my skull, the way darkness fell by 4 in the afternoon, stretching the nights into small eternities. But nothing had prepared me for this. I set down my mug with trembling hands and reached for the shotgun propped beside the door, Grandma Ellie's parting gift before cancer took her last summer. "The woods have teeth, Mariah," she told me, pressing the cold metal into my hands. "Remember what I taught you." The memory of her calloused fingers against mine sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Clutching the shotgun with sweaty palms, I approached the door. Another thud, weaker this time, followed by a sound so mournful it seemed to vibrate in my chest cavity. I reached for the small window beside the door, wiping away frost with my sleeve to peer outside. My breath caught. 3 wolves, their fur crusted with ice, huddled against my door. The largest, silver gray with eyes like polished amber, raised its head as if sensing my presence. Our gazes locked through the glass, and something impossible happened. It spoke. Not with words, not exactly. But in that moment of connection, I felt rather than heard. "Please. Help us. Let us in." I stumbled backward, my hip colliding painfully with the edge of the small entry table. The silver wolf's eyes, intelligent human, had shattered something fundamental in my understanding of the world. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. "There are secrets in these mountains older than the trees, Mariah, things your city education can't explain." I'd always dismissed her stories as the superstitious ramblings of a woman who'd lived too long in isolation. Tales of shapeshifters and ancient pacts between humans and beasts seemed charming in the safety of daylight, over mugs of hot chocolate. Less so now, with 3 massive predators at my door, and that voice that wasn't a voice still resonating in my head. The smallest wolf collapsed then, its dark body crumpling into the snow. The silver one nudged it with its muzzle, then looked back at me with such naked desperation that my fingers moved to the door latch before my brain could object. "I must be insane," I whispered, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath my feet as I approached the door again. My grandmother's silver pendant burned cold against my breastbone, another inheritance, along with her cryptic words, "When the time comes, this will help you see the truth beneath the skin." I clutched it now, its familiar weight suddenly significant in ways I couldn't articulate. "If you're going to eat me," I said to the wolves beyond the door, "at least do it quickly." Wind and snow exploded into the cabin as I pulled the door open. The wolves didn't hesitate, slipping inside like shadows as I struggled to push the door closed against the gale. When I finally managed it, I turned to find them huddled by the stove, steam rising from their fur as ice began to melt. They didn't look like predators now. They looked desperate, afraid. The silver one, clearly the alpha, kept its amber eyes fixed on me, while the other 2 trembled violently, ice still clinging to their fur. The collapsed one, I noticed with alarm, was breathing in shallow, labored gasps. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked, still gripping the shotgun. "I'm not a vet." The silver wolf took a step toward me. I raised the gun instinctively. "We need to shift. Need warmth. Safety." That voice not voice again, sliding into my thoughts like a whisper. My hands shook on the shotgun. What does that mean? Shift? The wolf's eyes seemed to glow in the firelight. "You know, your blood knows. The pendant, your grandmother." My free hand flew to the silver pendant at my throat. This is insane. I'm hallucinating. Cabin fever or carbon monoxide or... The wolf took another step forward, and I stumbled back until I hit the wall. It stopped, seeming to understand my fear. "Please. Eden is dying. We can't shift until we're warm. We need blankets, hot water. Then you'll understand. Eden. A name. The wolf had given me a name for the fallen one. My eyes darted to the smallest wolf, whose breathing seemed more labored by the second. Blankets, I repeated numbly. Hot water. Moving like someone in a dream, I set down the shotgun and gathered every blanket I owned, along with the quilt from my bed, the one Grandma Ellie had stitched with symbols I'd always thought were merely decorative. The silver wolf watched me work, its gaze unnervingly intelligent, as I boiled water on the stove and filled hot water bottles. "This is all I have," I said, arranging the blankets near the stove. "I don't know what else to do." The silver wolf approached the pile, nudging the other two toward it. The collapsed one, Eden, barely moved. With gentle teeth, the silver one dragged Eden onto the thickest blanket, then looked at me expectantly. "The pendant. Hold it. It will protect you from what comes next." My fingers closed around the silver amulet, tracing the familiar pattern etched into its surface, a crescent moon encircling a wolf's head. How had I never seen it for what it was? What happened next defied everything I knew about reality. As the wolves began to warm, their bodies began to change. It started with the silver one, a rippling beneath the fur, bones shifting with sickening cracks. I pressed myself against the wall, unable to look away as fur receded. Limbs elongated, and the wolf's body contorted into something else entirely, into a man. Where the silver wolf had been, a naked man now crouched on my cabin floor, steam rising from his skin. His hair matched the wolf's coat, silver-streaked despite his apparent youth. And when he raised his head, those same amber eyes locked with mine. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough as if long unused. "You've saved our lives." I slid down the wall until I sat on the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. This isn't happening. The second wolf was changing now, transforming into a woman with coppery hair and freckled skin. She immediately turned to the third wolf, Eden, who remained in animal form, shivering violently despite the blankets. "She's too weak to shift on her own," the woman said, her voice tinged with an accent I couldn't place. "Liam, we need to help her." The silver-haired man, Liam, nodded grimly. "Mariah," he said, and hearing my name from his lips sent another shock through me. "We need more heat. As much as you can manage." "How do you know my name?" I whispered. His amber eyes softened slightly. "Your grandmother spoke of you often. Ellie was our friend, our ally. She promised you would help us if the time came." "My grandmother. Of course." The pieces began falling into place. Her isolated lifestyle, her cryptic warnings, the symbols on her quilts, the pendant. "She never told me," I said, a current of betrayal running beneath my shock. "She never prepared me for this. She wanted to," the copper-haired woman said gently. "But there wasn't time. The hunters found her before she could explain everything." "Hunters?" My voice cracked. "What hunters?" "She died of cancer." Liam and the woman exchanged a look heavy with meaning. "Is that what they told you?" Liam asked softly, before I could process this new horror. Eden's wolf body convulsed violently. "Later," Liam said urgently. "First we save Eden. Please, Mariah. More heat." I moved automatically, stoking the fire to blazing and bringing every hot water bottle I could fill. As I worked, the two shifted werewolves, I couldn't believe I was even thinking that word, placed their hands on Eden's trembling form, murmuring words in a language that sounded ancient, primal. Under their touch, Eden's transformation began, but it was clearly wrong. Stuttering, halting, painful to witness. The wolf's body contorted, fur receding in patches to reveal bluish skin beneath. Limbs elongated, then snapped back. A human cry emerged from the wolf's throat, a sound of such agony that tears sprang to my eyes. "She's fighting it," the copper-haired woman said frantically. "She's too scared." Liam looked up at me, desperation etched across his features. "The pendant. She needs to see it, to know we're safe here." I hesitated only a moment before approaching, pendant clutched in my trembling hand. As I knelt beside Eden's shifting form, her eyes, part wolf, part human, found mine, wild with pain and fear. "It's okay," I whispered, not knowing if it was true. "You're safe here." I held the pendant where she could see it, and something in her gaze changed. Recognition. Relief. Her body arched one final time, the transformation rushing to completion. Where the small dark wolf had been, a young woman now lay, her skin alarmingly pale, dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. She couldn't have been more than 19, my age. "Warm," she gasped, her eyes fluttering, so cold inside. The copper-haired woman gathered Eden in her arms, wrapping her in blankets. "Hypothermia coupled with silver poisoning," she explained grimly. "The cold makes it worse, prevents shifting, which is how we heal." "Silver poisoning?" I echoed. Liam nodded. Accepting a blanket, I mechanically handed him to cover his nakedness. The hunters used silver-tipped bullets. "Eden took one in the shoulder 3 days ago. We've been running ever since, trying to reach your grandmother's cabin. We didn't know she was gone until," his voice faltered, "until we saw you through the window." I sank into the nearest chair, my mind spinning. "Who are you people? Why were you looking for my grandmother? And who are these hunters?" "My name is Liam Blackwood," he said. "This is Nora, and Eden is my younger sister. We're the last of the northern pack." His eyes held mine steadily. "And the hunters are the same people who killed your grandmother, Mariah. They call themselves the Silver Order." "No," I shook my head violently. "No, that's not possible. I was with her when she died, in the hospital. Cancer." "Did you see her body?" Nora asked gently. "After?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't. There had been a closed casket at the funeral. At the insistence of the hospital, they'd said. Something about the aggressive treatments making viewing inadvisable. "They found her because of me," Liam said, self-loathing evident in his voice. "I came to her for help, just like now. I didn't know they were tracking me." Eden moaned softly, drawing our attention. Her breathing was shallow, her skin waxy. "The silver is still inside her," Nora said urgently. "We need to get it out or she'll die." "I have a first aid kit," I offered weakly, knowing it was inadequate even as I said it. "We need more than that," Liam said. "We need the box." "What box?" "Your grandmother kept a wooden box with our kind's healing herbs, spelled to protect them from decay, usually hidden beneath a floorboard." I stared at him. "The one with the moon carved on the lid? I found it last week when I was cleaning." Hope flared in Liam's eyes. "Where is it?" I retrieved it from beneath my bed. This box I'd assumed was just another of my grandmother's odd collections. Inside were dozens of small cloth bags, each labeled in her precise handwriting: Wolf's Bane, Moonflower, Bloodroot. "How did she know all this?" I whispered. Liam's expression softened. "She was what our kind calls a keeper. A human born with the ability to see us as we truly are, to help maintain the balance between our worlds. It runs in bloodlines, like yours." The pendant seemed to pulse against my skin as his words sank in. "That's why I could hear you, why I could see." I trailed off, unable to articulate the impossibility of what I'd witnessed. "Yes, not everyone can. Most humans would see only wolves, hear only animal sounds." He leaned forward, his amber eyes intense. "You're a keeper too, Mariah, the last of your line, just as we are the last of ours." A crash from outside made us all freeze. Through the howling wind came another sound. Engines, multiple vehicles approaching through the storm. Liam and Nora exchanged looks of naked terror. "They found us," Nora whispered. "So quickly." Liam's face hardened. "They must have been tracking us since the mountain pass." Eden whimpered, trying to rise despite her weakness. "We have to run." "You can't," I said, finding my voice. "You'll freeze to death out there, especially her." "We'll die for certain if we stay," Liam countered, already moving to gather their few possessions. I looked at Eden's pale face, at the angry wound in her shoulder where the silver bullet had entered, at Nora's frightened eyes and Liam's desperate determination. Something stirred in me, a protectiveness I didn't understand, a certainty that transcended the impossibility of the situation. My grandmother had protected these people, had died for them, if what they said was true, and they had come to me for help, trusting that I would honor her legacy. The engines grew louder, headlights sweeping across my front windows as vehicles pulled up outside my cabin. I made my decision. "There's a cellar," I said, moving toward the kitchen. "Behind the pantry. My grandmother showed me once, said it was a just-in-case place." Hope and disbelief warred on Liam's face. "A hiding place?" "More than that," I said, pushing aside the small pantry shelf to reveal a trapdoor beneath. She called it a sanctuary. As I pulled the door open, revealing stone steps descending into darkness, I saw symbols carved into the underside of the wood, the same symbols from her quilt, from my pendant. Protection symbols, concealment spells. I somehow knew their purpose without being told. "How did I never see this before?" I whispered. "You weren't ready to see it," Liam said softly. "The magic hides it until needed." Headlights flooded the cabin as vehicles pulled to a stop outside. Car doors slammed. "Go," I urged, helping Nora carry Eden toward the trapdoor. "I'll handle them." Liam paused at the top of the steps, his amber eyes searching mine. "They'll kill you if they suspect." "They won't," I said with more confidence than I felt. "As far as they know, I'm just a grieving granddaughter who inherited a cabin." "Mariah." His hand closed over mine, warm and solid. "Thank you." Something electric passed between us in that touch. Recognition, connection, possibility. Then he was gone, helping Nora and Eden down the steps. Before closing the trapdoor, I saw symbols etched into the stone walls of the cellar, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. More of my grandmother's magic. More secrets she'd kept from me. I pushed the pantry shelf back into place, just as heavy fists pounded on my front door. "Conservation Department," a deep voice called. "Open up, please. We're tracking dangerous wildlife in the area." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my grandmother's pendant against my skin, a reminder of a legacy I was only beginning to understand. Of a choice I'd just made that would change everything. "Coming," I called, moving toward the door, my heart thundering in my chest. I never imagined when I came to this isolated cabin that I would find wolves at my door. Never dreamed they would be something more than wolves. And I certainly never expected to be standing between them and the people who had murdered my grandmother. But as I reached for the door handle, I knew with sudden clarity that this was exactly where I was meant to be. I opened the door just enough to reveal my face, keeping my body positioned to block the view of the cabin's interior. 3 men stood on my porch, snow swirling around their broad shoulders. The tallest wore a dark green uniform with an official-looking patch, Conservation Department, just as he'd claimed. The other 2 were dressed in civilian winter gear, but something about their stance screamed military. Or hunter. "Can I help you?" I asked, injecting just the right amount of confusion and irritation into my voice. "It's after midnight." The uniformed man smiled apologetically, but his eyes remained cold as they scanned what little he could see of my cabin. "Sorry to disturb you, ma'am. I'm Officer Brennan. We're tracking a pack of wolves that attacked a campsite about 10 miles north of here. Dangerous animals, possibly rabid." I frowned, feigning concern while my heart hammered against my ribs. "Wolves? This close to the cabin? Afraid so." His gaze sharpened. "Mind if we come in? Just need to ask a few questions. Warm up a bit. Nasty night to be out." Every instinct screamed danger, but I knew refusing would only heighten their suspicion. I opened the door wider, praying the lingering scent of wet wolf wasn't detectable to human noses. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "I just made tea." The 3 men stomped snow from their boots and entered my cabin. Their eyes moved systematically around the space, taking in every detail. I noticed the 2 in civilian clothes kept their right hands suspiciously close to their sides, near the bulges beneath their jackets. Guns. They were armed. "You alone out here?" Officer Brennan asked, his tone casual as he warmed his hands by the stove. "Yes," I said, moving to the kitchen to put on a kettle, needing something to do with my trembling hands. "It was my grandmother's place. I inherited it last summer." "Ellie Blackwood's granddaughter," the shorter of the 2 civilians said. "Not a question. I nearly dropped the kettle. They knew my grandmother, and they'd used her maiden name, Blackwood, the same surname as Liam." My mind raced with implications. "That's right," I said carefully. Did you know her? The men exchanged glances I couldn't interpret. Only by reputation, Officer Brennan said smoothly. She was quite the local character from what I hear. I busied myself with the tea, hyper-aware of their movements behind me. One of them was walking a slow circuit of the cabin, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. I prayed the trapdoor was as well concealed as Liam had suggested. So, I said, turning with mugs in hand, these wolves, have they attacked anyone? Killed 2 campers, the taller civilian said bluntly. His voice was flat, emotionless. Tore them to pieces. I let my face register appropriate horror, though inside, certainty bloomed that he was lying. These weren't conservation officers tracking dangerous animals. These were the hunters Liam had spoken of. That's terrible, I said. But I haven't seen any wolves. Haven't heard any either, and sound carries out here. Officer Brennan accepted a mug of tea with a nod of thanks. You sure about that? Tracks suggest they headed this way. 3 of them, 2 adults, 1 juvenile. The precision of the description confirmed my suspicions. Normal wildlife officers wouldn't have such specific information. I've been here all day, I insisted. If wolves had come near the cabin, I would have noticed. The shorter civilian had made his way to the pile of blankets near the stove, the ones the werewolves had used. I saw his nostrils flare slightly as he bent to touch them. You use all these blankets yourself? He asked, straightening. Place isn't that cold with that stove going. My mouth went dry. I was sorting winter supplies earlier. Some of them need washing. The lie sounded weak even to my own ears. His eyes narrowed fractionally. These smell like they've been outside. I aired them on the porch this afternoon, I countered, the lie coming more smoothly this time. Before the storm got bad, Officer Brennan was watching our exchange with calculating eyes. Miss Blackwood, Reynolds, I corrected automatically. My father's name. Blackwood was my grandmother's maiden name. Of course, Miss Reynolds, he amended with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. May I ask what brings a young woman like yourself to such an isolated location? Most people your age prefer civilization. Cell service. Netflix. It was a fair question. One I'd asked myself many times since arriving. But now it felt loaded, probing for weaknesses. I needed space after Grandma Ellie died, I said, offering a truth that would sound plausible. And I'm working on my thesis, another truth, though I hadn't written a word since arriving. The isolation helps me focus. Thesis on what? The taller civilian asked. Folklore and cultural anthropology, I said, specifically, how isolated communities develop unique mythologies to explain natural phenomena. I nearly bit my tongue as the words left my mouth. Of all the subjects I could have mentioned, why had I chosen one so dangerously close to the truth now hidden beneath my floorboards? Officer Brennan's expression sharpened with interest. Like werewolf legends, for instance. The air in the cabin seemed to freeze. I forced a casual shrug. Among others, every culture has shapeshifter myths. Skinwalkers, Selkies, berserkers. They're all variations on humanity's attempt to reconcile our dual nature. Civilized versus primal. He nodded slowly. Fascinating subject. Your grandmother collected local folklore, I believe. It wasn't a question, and it confirmed they knew far more about Ellie than they'd initially admitted. I took a deliberate sip of tea, using the moment to steady myself. She had an interest, yes. The shorter civilian had moved to examine the bookshelves, where many of my grandmother's volumes on local history and mythology stood. His fingers trailed along the spines, more than an interest, I'd say. A tense silence filled the cabin, broken only by the howling wind and the crackle of the fire. I could feel their suspicion like a physical presence, pressing against my skin. They knew something, or suspected it, but were waiting for me to make a mistake. I decided to go on the offensive. Look, I appreciate your concern about these wolves, but as I've said, I haven't seen any sign of them, and it's late. I set down my mug with a decisive clink. If there's nothing else, I'd like to get back to my work. Officer Brennan studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Of course. Sorry to have disturbed you. He handed me a card. If you do see or hear anything unusual, call this number immediately, day or night. I accepted the card with a polite smile. I will. One more thing, the taller civilian said, his cold eyes boring into mine. Mind if we take a look around outside? Check for tracks? Wolves might have passed through without your noticing. My pulse jumped. Now? In this blizzard? We have equipment, he said, patting a large flashlight at his belt. Won't take long. I couldn't think of a reasonable objection. If you feel it's necessary, Officer Brennan nodded to his companions. Hale, check the perimeter. Burke, the outbuildings. The men zipped their jackets and headed back into the storm, leaving me alone with Officer Brennan. As soon as the door closed behind them, he turned to me with a different kind of intensity. Miss Reynolds, he said softly, I feel obligated to warn you that these woods can be dangerous for those who don't understand their particular ecosystem. There was weight behind his words, a double meaning I couldn't miss. I grew up visiting this cabin, I said carefully. I know these woods better than you might think. His smile was cold. Do you? Your grandmother had certain beliefs about the local wildlife. Beliefs that ultimately put her in danger. My blood turned to ice. My grandmother died of cancer. Is that what you believe? He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Cancer is a convenient explanation for many things, isn't it? Especially when a body is too damaged to be viewed. Nausea rose in my throat. What are you saying? I'm saying, he continued, that your grandmother made dangerous choices, harbored dangerous elements. I'd hate to see her granddaughter make the same mistakes. Anger flared through my fear. This man, this stranger, was all but admitting his organization had murdered my grandmother, while simultaneously threatening me. The pendant seemed to burn against my skin, and I resisted the urge to touch it. My grandmother was a kind woman who helped anyone in need, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. If that's the kind of mistake you're referring to, then I'm proud to follow in her footsteps. Something shifted in Brennan's eyes. Respect, perhaps, or resignation. Then I've done my duty in warning you. The front door burst open as the men returned, bringing a gust of snow and cold air. The one called Burke immediately approached Brennan. Tracks around back, he said in a low voice. 3 sets, heading straight to the cabin. None leading away. Brennan's gaze returned to me, all pretense of friendliness gone. Care to explain that, Miss Reynolds? My mind raced. There are deer that come right up to the porch sometimes. My grandmother used to feed them. These weren't deer tracks, Hale said flatly. I wouldn't know, I replied, forcing my voice to remain even. I'm not exactly a wildlife expert. Brennan's eyes never left mine. Search the cabin, he ordered quietly. You can't do that, I protested. You don't have a warrant. Conservation officers have broad authority when tracking dangerous predators, he countered smoothly, especially ones that have already killed. My heart threatened to burst from my chest as Hale and Burke began a methodical search of my small cabin. They looked behind furniture, inside closets, under the bed. When Burke approached the kitchen and the concealed pantry, I had to force myself not to react. Sir, Hale called from the bathroom, blood in the sink. I silently cursed myself. Eden's wound had bled when they'd first arrived, and Nora had used the sink to clean it. I'd wiped it down, but apparently not thoroughly enough. I cut myself chopping vegetables earlier, I lied, holding up my left hand where, coincidentally, a small cut from unpacking boxes was still visible. See? Brennan examined the shallow cut, skepticism evident. That's a very small cut for the amount of blood Hale described. It bled a lot, I insisted. Fingertips always do. He didn't believe me. That much was clear. But he couldn't disprove my claim either. A standoff had been reached. Burke continued his search, now dangerously close to the pantry. My grandmother's pendant grew warmer against my skin. On impulse, I clutched it, silently pleading, hide them, protect them. Burke pulled open the pantry door, examining the shelves of canned goods and supplies. He moved a few items, looking behind them. Then he knelt, running his hand along the floor, exactly where the trapdoor was located. I held my breath. Nothing here, he reported, standing again. Just food and supplies. Relief flooded through me so strongly my knees nearly buckled. The magic had worked. He hadn't seen the trapdoor that I knew was there. Brennan's jaw tightened. Check again, he ordered. Sir, Burke said, I've been thorough. There's nothing. A beat of tense silence followed. Brennan's eyes locked with mine, cold and calculating. He knew something was wrong, but couldn't pinpoint what. You're certain the tracks led directly to the cabin? He asked Hale. Yes, sir. Fresh. Within the hour. Brennan ran a hand through his close-cropped hair, frustration evident. Miss Reynolds, I'm going to be direct with you. We both know wolves came to this cabin tonight. What we don't know is where they went. I met his gaze steadily. Officer Brennan, I've cooperated fully with your intrusion. I've answered your questions and allowed you to search my home without a warrant. I have nothing more to tell you because I know nothing about any wolves. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. We'll be stationing men around your cabin tonight. For your protection. The threat was thinly veiled. They would be watching, waiting for the werewolves to emerge. That seems excessive, I said. But you'll do what you feel is necessary, I suppose? Indeed we will. Brennan gathered his men with a look. We'll leave you to your thesis, Miss Reynolds. Remember what I said about making the same mistakes as your grandmother. As they filed out into the storm, Brennan paused at the door. One last question. That pendant you're wearing, it's unusual. Family heirloom? My hand rose to cover it instinctively. Yes, my grandmother's. His lips curved in a humorless smile. I thought as much. Good night, Miss Reynolds. When the door finally closed behind them, I sagged against the wall, trembling with delayed shock and fear. Through the frosted windows, I watched their dark figures move toward their vehicles. But true to Brennan's word, they didn't all leave. 2 remained, taking up positions at the edge of the clearing, nearly invisible except for the occasional gleam of flashlights. Guards. Or hunters waiting for prey. I waited until I was certain Brennan had driven away before approaching the pantry. My hand shook as I pushed aside the shelf and revealed the trapdoor that Burke somehow hadn't seen. I knocked softly. It's me, I whispered. They're gone, but they've left men watching the cabin. The trapdoor opened silently, revealing Liam's worried face. We heard everything, he said softly. You were incredible. I flushed at the unexpected praise. I lied terribly. They knew it. But they couldn't prove it. He climbed out, helping me replace the shelf. That's what matters. In the main room, Nora sat beside Eden, whose color looked marginally better. The herbs from my grandmother's box had apparently helped. How is she? I asked. Stable, Nora replied. But the silver is still in her system. We need to remove the bullet fragments to fully heal her. We can't stay here, Liam said grimly. They'll bring reinforcements by morning. More men, more equipment. Maybe silver detectors. Silver detectors? I echoed. Technology specifically designed to locate our kind, he explained. Or anything containing silver that might harm us, like that bullet in Eden's shoulder. I glanced anxiously toward the windows, where I could still make out the distant figures of the watchers. You can't leave tonight. They'll see you. We have no choice, Liam insisted. Every hour we remain puts you in more danger. They already suspect me, I argued. If you disappear from a surrounded cabin, they'll know for certain I helped you. Liam ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair, frustration evident. What do you suggest? We can't exactly stroll out the front door. I thought of my grandmother, of all she must have known, all she'd tried to protect, of the magic that had hidden the trapdoor from Burke's searching hands. The cellar, I said slowly. Did you explore it fully? Liam and Nora exchanged glances. There was a tunnel, Nora admitted, but it was collapsed about 20 feet in, probably years ago. Hope flared in my chest. Show me. Back in the cellar, they led me to a narrow archway partially obscured by fallen stones. Beyond it, a dark tunnel stretched into the earth, ending in a jumble of rocks and dirt that blocked the passage. See? Liam said. No way through. I approached the blockage, my grandmother's pendant warm against my skin. Something told me to look closer, to really see. I touched the pendant, focusing on the barrier before me. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like a photograph developing, the solid wall of debris seemed to shimmer, revealing glimpses of an open passage beyond. "It's not real," I breathed. "It's an illusion, like the trapdoor." Liam stared in disbelief. A concealment spell? But I should have sensed that. Not if it was keyed to keep her blood, Nora said quietly. Ellie's magic would respond only to her bloodline. I reached out tentatively, my fingers passing through what appeared to be solid rock. "It's open," I confirmed, amazement flooding through me. "Where do you think it leads?" "If I remember correctly," Liam said, "there's an old hunting cabin about 2 miles east. Ellie used to mention it as an emergency fallback." "Then that's where you'll go," I decided. "Tonight, while the storm covers your tracks." "What about you?" Liam asked, concern evident in his amber eyes. "They'll question you again when they find us gone." "Let me worry about that," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "I'll say I slept through the night, heard nothing. They searched the cabin. They know there was nowhere for wolves to hide." Liam studied me intently. "Why are you helping us? You only just learned we exist. Most humans would be terrified, calling for our heads." I thought about it, surprised by the certainty of my answer. "Because my grandmother believed you were worth protecting. Because you came to me for help, trusting me when you had no reason to. And because I touched the pendant. Because this feels right, like I've been waiting my whole life to discover this part of myself." Something shifted in Liam's expression. A softening. A recognition. Keepers often say that finding us feels like coming home to a place they never knew they'd lost. Our gazes held for a long moment, something unspoken passing between us. Then Eden groaned softly, breaking the spell. "We need to move," Nora urged. "She needs proper care, and those men outside won't stay in the cold forever." I nodded, suddenly decisive. "Take supplies from the pantry, food, water, medical supplies. I'll pack the herbs from my grandmother's box." As we prepared for their departure, I found myself watching Liam, the grace with which he moved, the gentle way he tended to his sister, the authority he carried without arrogance. Every so often, he would catch my gaze, a question in his amber eyes that I couldn't answer. When they were ready, backpacks filled with essentials, we gathered at the tunnel entrance. Eden was conscious now, leaning heavily on Nora, but insistent on walking under her own power. "The tunnel will shield your scent and tracks," I said. "The storm should cover the rest." Liam hesitated. "What if they come back? What if they hurt you?" "They won't," I said with more certainty than I felt. "They have no proof, only suspicion. And I'm just a harmless graduate student writing a thesis, remember?" His expression remained troubled. "If anything happens, anything at all, use the pendant. Focus on me, call my name in your mind. I'll hear you." "Like you called to me through the door," I realized. He nodded. "The bond between a keeper and a shifter is ancient magic, stronger than anything the hunters have." "I'll be fine," I insisted. "Go." Nora stepped forward, surprising me with a quick, fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Eden, pale but determined, met my eyes. "I won't forget this debt," she said solemnly. "None of us will." Then it was Liam's turn. He stood before me, his expression conflicted. "Mariah," whatever he intended to say remained unspoken. Instead, he reached out, his fingers brushing mine in a touch that sent electricity racing up my arm. Then he pressed something into my palm, a small wooden token carved with the same symbols as my pendant. "So you can find us," he said softly, "when you're ready." Before I could respond, he turned and led his pack into the tunnel, disappearing into the darkness beyond the illusory barrier. I watched until the last echo of their footsteps faded, then made my way back up to the cabin, sealing the trapdoor behind me. Alone again, I moved to the window, watching the silent sentinels at the edge of the clearing. The storm was beginning to ease, stars appearing between the racing clouds. By morning, the hunters would discover their prey had somehow vanished from a surrounded cabin, and I would be here, the granddaughter of Ellie Blackwood, with a pendant around my neck and questions burning in my mind. Questions about my grandmother, about the werewolves, about the hunters who had killed her, about the magic that now seemed to flow in my veins, awakened by a silver wolf's desperate plea. about Liam Blackwood, whose touch still tingled on my skin and whose wooden token I now clutched like a lifeline. I had made my choice tonight, stepped into a world I never knew existed. And something told me this was only the beginning. Morning arrived with harsh clarity, sunlight reflecting blindingly off fresh snow. I hadn't slept, spending the night alternating between watching the silent sentinels outside and tracing the carvings on Liam's wooden token. By dawn, the men stationed around my cabin had been replaced by fresh hunters. I could no longer pretend they were anything else, their faces grim as they surveyed the pristine snowscape. I made a show of normality, brewing coffee and opening curtains as if oblivious to their surveillance. Inside, my thoughts raced with plans and questions. How long before they returned to interrogate me? What would I say when they discovered the werewolves had vanished? I didn't have to wait long for answers. Just after 9, 3 vehicles crunched through the snow, parking in a semicircle before my cabin. Brennan emerged from the lead SUV, his expression thunderous as he conferred with the night watchers. When he strode toward my door, his posture telegraphed controlled fury. I opened the door before he could knock, feigning surprise. "Officer Brennan, I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." His cold eyes assessed me, searching for cracks in my composure. "May we come in, Miss Reynolds?" I stepped aside, noticing that this time he'd brought 5 men with him instead of 2. All wore sidearms openly now, abandoning the conservation officer pretense. One carried what looked like a metal detector, the silver detector Liam had mentioned. "Is something wrong?" I asked, careful to keep my voice steady. Brennan removed his gloves with deliberate slowness. The wolves we were tracking seemed to have disappeared. I widened my eyes. "Isn't that good news? Maybe they moved on." "Impossible," he said flatly. My men maintained visual contact with every exit point from this cabin all night. Nothing left. Not even a squirrel. I shrugged. "Then maybe they were never here." His jaw tightened. "We found tracks leading directly to your door. No tracks leading away. You expect me to believe they simply vanished?" "I don't know what to tell you," I said. "As I explained yesterday, I haven't seen any wolves." Brennan stepped closer, invading my personal space. "Miss Reynolds, I'm going to be direct. We know your grandmother was a sympathizer. We know she harbored creatures that look human but aren't. And we strongly suspect you're following in her footsteps." The directness of the accusation startled me, but I held my ground. My grandmother was an eccentric old woman who liked to tell folklore stories. As for me, I'm a graduate student writing a thesis on cultural mythology. Whatever you think is happening here is a product of your imagination. His eyes narrowed. "Peters," he barked without looking away from me. "Scan the cabin." The man with the silver detector moved forward, powering up his device. It emitted a soft, pulsing hum as he began a methodical sweep of my living room. "This is ridiculous," I protested. "You have no right." "We have every right," Brennan cut in. "Under the Supernatural Threat Containment Act of 1967, I blinked in genuine surprise. "The what?" A thin smile stretched his lips. "Not something they teach in history class, is it? After the Yellowstone incident, the government quietly established protocols for dealing with anomalous entities. My organization enforces those protocols." "You're insane," I said, my heart pounding despite my outward calm. "There's no such thing as—" "Save it," he interrupted. "We both know what was in this cabin last night. What I want to know is where they went." The detector's hum grew louder as Peters approached the bathroom. He paused, the machine emitting a series of rapid beeps. "Got something," he called. Brennan's eyes gleamed with triumph. He brushed past me, following Peters into the small bathroom. I trailed behind, stomach knotting with dread. Peters held the detector over the sink drain. The machine beeped frantically. "Silver residue," Peters confirmed. "Recent. From the bullet in the young female's shoulder," another man suggested. "They must have tried to remove it." Brennan turned to me, his expression cold. "Care to explain why there's silver in your drain, Miss Reynolds? Silver consistent with our specialized ammunition?" My mind raced. I needed a plausible explanation. And fast. "My jewelry," I said, touching my grandmother's pendant. I cleaned it yesterday. It's silver. Brennan's eyes dropped to the pendant. May I see that? Every instinct screamed to refuse, but I knew that would only confirm his suspicions. With reluctant fingers, I unclasped the chain and handed it over. He examined it carefully, his thumb tracing the wolf and crescent moon design. Interesting symbolism, he murmured. Familiar, too. It was my grandmother's, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. A family heirloom. He turned it over, revealing more tiny symbols etched into the back, symbols I hadn't noticed before. His expression hardened. Do you know what these markings mean, Miss Reynolds? I shook my head. Decorative elements, I assumed. They're protection runes, he said flatly. Ancient magic, used by keepers to shield their pets from detection. He looked up, his eyes boring into mine. Are you aware of what your grandmother was? What you are? A chill ran through me at his words. He knew everything. About keepers, about the magic, about my heritage. Yet I couldn't admit it, couldn't give him the confirmation he sought. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said. My grandmother was a retired librarian. I'm a graduate student. Whatever fantasy you've constructed around my family is your problem, not mine. Brennan studied me for a long moment, then gestured to his men. Search everything, every inch. Look for hidden spaces, concealed doors, anything unusual. As they spread through my cabin, I fought to maintain my composure. The trapdoor was protected by my grandmother's magic. Burke hadn't seen it yesterday, but would the spell hold against a more thorough search? Against men who knew exactly what they were looking for? Peters continued scanning with his detector, moving methodically through the cabin. When he reached the kitchen, my pulse quickened. The pantry, the trapdoor. If the device detected silver there. But as he swept the pantry, the detector remained silent. Relief flooded through me, only to freeze when I realized what it meant. The magic was working. The same magic that flowed in my blood, that had concealed the tunnel last night. The magic of a keeper. After 30 tense minutes, the search ended with nothing to show for their efforts. Brennan's frustration was palpable, as his men reported finding no hidden compartments, no secret passages, nothing to explain where 3 wolves had disappeared to. Impossible, he muttered, pacing my small living room. They were here. The tracks, the blood, the silver residue. They couldn't just vanish. I said nothing, waiting. Let him struggle with the impossibility of it. Finally, he stopped before me, his expression calculating. You know what I think, Miss Reynolds? I think you're exactly like your grandmother. I think you have abilities you don't fully understand yet. I think you help those creatures escape, even if you can't explain how you did it. I met his gaze steadily. What I understand is that you've invaded my home twice in 24 hours, based on some delusional theory about werewolves and magic. I've cooperated out of respect for your badge, but my patience is wearing thin. Werewolves, he repeated, seizing on the word. Interesting choice of term. I don't recall mentioning werewolves specifically. I silently cursed my slip. You said creatures that look human but aren't. What else would you be implying? His eyes narrowed fractionally, indeed. He handed back my pendant with obvious reluctance. We'll be watching you, Miss Reynolds, day and night. If those creatures contact you, if they return, we'll know. Wonderful, I said dryly. I've always wanted stalkers with government backing. His lips twitched, almost a smile. You have your grandmother's spirit. She was just as defiant, right to the end. The casual confirmation of her murder sent ice through my veins. Get out of my cabin, I said quietly. Now. Brennan nodded to his men, who filed out silently. At the door, he paused. One last thing. If you are helping them, you should know what they really are. Not the romantic creatures of myth, but savage killers who wear human skin as a disguise. Ask yourself why your grandmother died. Ask yourself if they were worth her sacrifice. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with his poisonous words. I watched through the window as the vehicles departed, leaving just 2 men behind, continuing their surveillance. I sank onto the couch, clutching my pendant. Brennan's words echoed in my mind. Ask yourself why your grandmother died. Ask yourself if they were worth her sacrifice. Was he telling the truth? Had my grandmother truly died protecting Liam and his pack? And if so, was I now walking the same dangerous path? I needed answers. Real answers. Not Brennan's twisted version of events. And there was only one place to find them. The wooden token Liam had given me seemed to pulse with warmth in my pocket. So you can find us, he'd said, when you're ready. I was more than ready. I was desperate. That night, after a day of performative normality for the benefit of my watchers, I prepared to leave. I packed a small backpack with essentials: food, water, warm clothes, my grandmother's box of herbs. The moon hung full and heavy in the sky, casting silver light across the snow, perfect for what I needed to do. But first, I had to deal with the hunters outside. I moved to the bathroom, pendant clutched in my hand. Last night, I discovered that my grandmother's magic responded to intent, to need. The trapdoor had been hidden because the werewolves needed sanctuary. The tunnel had revealed itself because they needed escape. Now, I needed distraction. Closing my eyes, I focused on the pendant, picturing wolves running through the forest far to the west, away from the hunting cabin where Liam and his pack had fled. Show them what they expect to see, I thought. Draw them away from here. The pendant warmed against my palm. When I opened my eyes, nothing seemed to have changed. Had it worked? Only one way to find out. I watched through the window, breath fogging the glass. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then one of the watchers straightened suddenly, pointing toward the western tree line. His companion raised binoculars, then reached frantically for his radio. Within moments, they were running for their vehicle, engine roaring to life as they sped down the access road. I waited 10 minutes to ensure they wouldn't return, then grabbed my backpack and made my way to the cellar. The token Liam had given me grew warmer as I approached the concealed tunnel, confirming my suspicion. It was linked somehow to him, a magical compass pointing toward its maker. The tunnel was pitch black beyond the cellar's dim light. I switched on my flashlight and stepped through the illusory barrier, feeling the strange sensation of passing through what looked solid. Beyond, the tunnel stretched ahead, rough-hewn and ancient, smelling of earth and secrets. I walked for what felt like hours, the token growing steadily warmer in my palm. The tunnel twisted and turned, occasionally branching. Each time, I followed the path where the token's heat intensified. Finally, it led me upward, to a trapdoor similar to the one in my cabin. I pushed it open cautiously, emerging into what appeared to be a woodshed attached to a small, dilapidated cabin. Light glowed from within, voices murmured, too low to distinguish words. I approached the door, heart pounding, and knocked softly. Instant silence fell, then footsteps approached, and the door swung open to reveal Liam, his amber eyes widening in shock. "Mariah," he breathed. "How did you—" "The token," I said, holding it up. "You said I could find you when I was ready." He pulled me inside quickly, scanning the darkness behind me. "You weren't followed?" "No. I created a distraction, an illusion of wolves to the west. The hunters chased it." Surprise and admiration flickered across his face. "You're learning to use your abilities quickly." Inside, the hunting cabin was small but surprisingly cozy. A fire burned in a stone hearth, casting flickering shadows. Eden lay on a makeshift bed nearby, her color much improved. Nora sat beside her, relief evident in her expression when she saw me. "You came," Eden said weakly. "I told them you would." I smiled, warmed by her faith. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she said. "Nora got the silver out while you kept the hunters occupied." Liam guided me to a chair near the fire. "You took a huge risk coming here. They'll know you helped us now." "They already knew," I said grimly. "Or strongly suspected. Brennan made that clear this morning." "Brennan," Nora spat the name like a curse. "That man has hunted our kind for decades." "He told me things," I said slowly. "About my grandmother, about keepers, about something called the Supernatural Threat Containment Act." I looked between them. "I need to know the truth. All of it." A heavy silence fell. Liam exchanged glances with Nora. some unspoken communication passing between them. "You deserve the truth," he finally said, "especially now that you've committed yourself to our cause." "Have I?" I asked, genuinely uncertain. "All I've done is help 3 strangers who needed sanctuary. I still don't know who or what you really are." Liam nodded, acknowledging the fairness of my words. "Then let me start at the beginning." He settled across from me, firelight casting half his face in shadow. "What do you know about werewolves? The myths, I mean." I shrugged. "The usual. People who transform into wolves during the full moon. Silver bullets. Contagious bites. Most of that is wrong," he said. "Inventions of humans who feared what they didn't understand." He leaned forward, his amber eyes intense. "We are Lupus sapiens, a separate species that evolved alongside humans, with the ability to shift between forms. We don't spread our nature through bites. We're born, not made." "And the full moon?" I asked, glancing toward the window where moonlight streamed in. "It affects us, yes," he admitted. "Makes shifting easier, heightens our senses and emotions, but we can change at will anytime, with practice and control." "And you look completely human in this form," I observed. "No one would know." "Which is why the hunters fear us," Nora interjected. "They can't distinguish us from humans without their technology. To them, we're infiltrators, monsters hiding among humanity." "Are you?" I asked bluntly. "Brennan said you were killers wearing human skin as a disguise." Anger flashed in Liam's eyes. "Of course he'd say that. It justifies their genocide." "So you've never killed humans?" I pressed. Liam's expression darkened. "I didn't say that. We have defended ourselves when attacked. And yes, there have been rogues among our kind who embrace their predatory nature too fully, just as there are human serial killers. The difference," Nora added, "is that humans don't exterminate entire families when one human commits murder." I considered this. "And my grandmother, what was her role in all this?" Liam's expression softened. "Ellie was a keeper, a human born with the ability to see our true nature, to communicate with us mind to mind. Keepers have existed alongside our kind for millennia, maintaining balance between our worlds. She helped us hide," Eden said quietly, "healed us when we were wounded, protected us from hunters with her magic." "And that's why they killed her," I said, the truth finally settling cold and heavy in my chest. "Because she protected you." Liam nodded gravely. "The Silver Order, Brennan's organization, discovered she was sheltering our pack. They came in the night, silver weapons ready." Pain etched deep lines around his eyes. "I was with her when they attacked. She used the last of her strength to help me escape, to cast a concealment spell so powerful it masked my presence, even as they tore through the cabin searching for me. And then they... what? Staged her death? Made it look like cancer?" "The Order has connections throughout government and medical institutions," Nora explained. "Falsifying a death certificate would be simple." I stood abruptly, pacing the small cabin as emotions roiled through me. Grief, rage, betrayal. All this time, I thought she died naturally. I thought I'd had the chance to say goodbye, to be with her at the end. My voice broke, but it was all a lie. Liam rose, his movements fluid and graceful, and stepped into my path. "She loved you, Mariah. Her last words to me were about you. How proud she was. How certain she was that you would carry on her legacy when the time came." "A legacy I knew nothing about," I cried. "She never told me any of this, never prepared me. How could she keep something so enormous from me my entire life?" "She was protecting you," he said gently. "The burden of knowledge is also the burden of choice. Once you know about us, you must choose, to help us or to turn away. She wanted you to have a normal life for as long as possible." I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. "And now? What choice do I have now? Brennan knows what I am, or at least suspects. He's watching my cabin. The moment I return, he'll know I've been to you." "You don't have to go back," Eden said quietly. "You could stay with us. Join the pack." Liam shot her a warning look. "Eden." "What?" she challenged. "She's a keeper. She belongs with us. It's not that simple," he countered. "Mariah has a life, an identity in the human world. Giving that up isn't a small thing." Their argument washed over me as I stared into the fire, mind racing with implications. If I returned, Brennan would be waiting. If I stayed, I'd be abandoning everything I knew. My studies, my friends, my future as I'd imagined it. Yet something about Eden's words resonated. She belongs with us. Since finding the wolves at my door, I'd felt more alive, more connected to something meaningful than I had in years. The magic that flowed in my veins when I touched the pendant, the sense of rightness when I helped Liam and his pack. It felt like discovering a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. "There's another option," Nora said, breaking into my thoughts. "One your grandmother and other keepers have used before." I looked up. "What?" "A foot in both worlds," she explained. "Return to your life, but serve as our eyes and ears among humans. Use your position, your seemingly normal identity, to help us navigate their world safely." "A spy, you mean?" I said. "An ally," Liam corrected. "Someone who can warn us of the hunters' movements, help coordinate safe passage for packs in danger." "And what about Brennan?" I asked. "He's not going to just forget about me." "No," Liam agreed. "But we can use that to our advantage. Let him watch you. Let him think you're trying to find us. Meanwhile, you'll be feeding us information about his operations." The strategy made a certain cold sense. Double agent. It would be dangerous, he acknowledged. If they ever discovered the truth, they'd kill me. I finished bluntly. Like they killed my grandmother. A heavy silence fell. Eden pushed herself up on her elbows, her young face suddenly fierce. "We wouldn't let that happen. We protect our own." "Am I your own?" I asked. The question directed primarily at Liam. "You barely know me." His amber eyes held mine steadily. "You're a keeper. The last of your bloodline, as we are the last of our pack. That creates a bond neither of us can ignore." He hesitated, then added softly, "And there's something more between us, Mariah. Something I can't explain yet, but I think you feel it too." Heat crept up my neck at his words, because he was right. From the moment our eyes had met through the frosted glass, I'd felt a connection to him that transcended rational explanation. Something primal, instinctive. A recognition that went soul-deep. "If I agree to this," I said carefully, "I need to know everything. No more secrets. I need to understand what I'm really part of. What powers I have as a keeper, what this pendant does. Everything my grandmother should have told me." Liam nodded solemnly. "I'll teach you what I know. The rest, you'll have to discover for yourself, as all keepers do. The magic manifests differently for each of you. And there's one more condition," I added, my resolve hardening. "I want to know who killed my grandmother. Not just Brennan and his organization, but the specific individuals who took her life. I want names, faces." Concern flickered across Liam's features. "Mariah, don't tell me revenge won't bring her back." I cut in. "I know that. But justice might give her peace." "Might give me peace." Nora studied me with newfound respect. "She has the right to know." After a long moment, Liam nodded. "I'll tell you what I know. Show you what I saw that night." "Show me?" I echoed. "Pack memory," Eden explained. "Liam can share his memories with you through the keeper bond, if you're strong enough to receive them." "I am," I said, with certainty I didn't entirely feel. Liam moved to kneel before me, his eyes level with mine. "This won't be easy to witness. Are you sure?" I nodded, steeling myself. "I need to know." "Then hold the pendant," he instructed. "It will focus the connection between us." I clutched the silver amulet as Liam placed his warm hands over mine. His amber eyes captured mine, and the world around us seemed to fade. "Open your mind to me," he whispered. "See what I saw. Feel what I felt." The cabin disappeared. Suddenly I was running through snow-covered forest, heart pounding, breath coming in steaming clouds. But it wasn't my heart, my breath. It was Liam's memory, his perspective. I felt his desperate fear, his determination. Heard the sounds of pursuit behind. Men crashing through undergrowth, dogs baying. The scent of gunpowder and silver stung my nostrils. Then a small cabin appeared ahead, not my grandmother's place, but somewhere else. Liam burst through the door. "Ellie!" his voice called. They found us. The order. My grandmother turned from her work at the table, her face, so much healthier and stronger than in my last memories of her, registering alarm. How many? She asked, already moving to gather items from shelves. At least 10, Liam's voice replied, armed with silver. They killed Mara and Thomas. Grief flickered across my grandmother's face. The pups? Safe for now. Nora has them in the tunnels. Ellie nodded sharply. Good. We need to. Headlights swept across the windows. Too late. Go, she commanded, pressing something into Liam's hands. The wooden box of herbs I now carried in my backpack. Take this. Find Mariah when the time comes. She'll continue what I started. I won't leave you, Liam protested. My grandmother's eyes flashed with determination. You must. The pack needs their alpha. Her hands began to glow faintly as she traced symbols in the air. I can hold them off. Give you time to escape. Ellie? The door crashed open. Men in tactical gear poured in, weapons raised. At their center stood a younger Brennan, his face twisted with triumph. The Keeper Blackwood, he announced, and her pet wolf, 2 for the price of 1. My grandmother straightened, power radiating from her slight frame. Liam, run, she commanded, and her voice carried the weight of Keeper magic. Even in memory, I felt Liam's body respond involuntarily to the command, backing toward a concealed door as my grandmother began to chant. Her pendant, my pendant now, glowing brilliantly. The last image before the memory faded. My grandmother, surrounded by a sphere of blue light as silver bullets ricocheted off it. Her eyes meeting Liam's one final time, a silent message passing between them. Then darkness, as the concealment spell took hold and Liam fled into the night, her sacrifice buying his escape. I gasped as the connection broke, tears streaming down my face. The cabin materialized around me again, but the echo of my grandmother's final moments remained branded in my mind. Now you know, Liam said softly, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. She died as she lived, protecting those who needed her. Brennan, I whispered, the name a curse on my lips. He was there. He led them. Yes, Liam confirmed. He's hunted our kind for decades. Your grandmother was a special target, a powerful keeper who had helped dozens of packs escape the Order's purges. I wiped my tears away, a cold clarity replacing my grief. I'll do it, I said. I'll be your ally in the human world. I'll learn to use these abilities, this magic. And someday, I'll make Brennan pay for what he did. It won't be easy, Nora warned. The Order has resources, technology, government backing. I don't care, I said. My grandmother gave her life for this cause. For you, the least I can do is continue her work. Liam's gaze was solemn, searching. You understand what this means? Once you commit to this path, there's no going back. The Order will never stop watching you. Your life will never be truly normal again. I thought of my quiet, predictable existence before the wolves appeared at my door. The thesis that now seemed trivial, the future that had felt empty without my grandmother in it. Then I thought of the magic humming in my veins, the connection I felt to these strange, hunted people, the purpose that now burned within me. Normal is overrated, I said, managing a small smile. Besides, I think we both know I was never meant for normal. Something flickered in Liam's amber eyes. Pride, relief, and something deeper that made my pulse quicken. Then it settled, he said. You'll return to your cabin tomorrow. Play the innocent graduate student. Meanwhile, we'll establish secure ways to communicate. I nodded, my mind already racing with plans and possibilities. I should go before dawn, while my distraction still has them searching the western forest. I'll show you a shorter path through the tunnels, Nora offered, one that emerges closer to your cabin. As she and Eden began gathering supplies for my return journey, Liam drew me aside, his expression intense. There's something else you should know, he said quietly. Something about keepers and werewolves that your grandmother might have told you, had there been time. My heart skipped. What? His eyes held mine, warm and ancient. Sometimes, rarely, a bond forms between a keeper and a shifter that transcends the usual alliance, a connection of souls, of magic, and blood. When I saw you through that frosted glass, when our minds touched for the first time. He trailed off, but I understood. The immediate connection, the sense of recognition, the way his presence both calmed and exhilarated me. Soul bonds are sacred to our kind, he continued. They can't be forced or manufactured. They simply are. His hand moved hesitantly toward mine, fingers brushing my wrist where my pulse raced. I think that's what's happening between us, Mariah. I've never felt this with anyone before. The truth of his words resonated within me. This pull toward him wasn't just attraction or gratitude or shared purpose. It was something primal, inevitable, like gravity or the turning of the earth. I feel it too, I admitted softly. Relief flooded his features. It won't be easy. The hunters, the danger, the secrets we must keep. Nothing worth having ever is, I replied, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. His fingers interlaced with mine, warm and solid. For a moment, we stood there, connected by touch and something far deeper. A bridge between two worlds, human and wolf, each incomplete without the other. Tomorrow would bring danger. Tomorrow, I would return to a cabin watched by killers. Would begin a dangerous double life as spy and keeper. Tomorrow, I would start learning the magic my grandmother had carried to her grave. But tonight, in this moment, I felt a sense of belonging I'd never known before, as if after a lifetime of searching, I'd finally found my way home. The journey back through the tunnels passed in contemplative silence. Nora led the way, her footsteps sure in the darkness, while I followed, mind churning with everything I'd learned. Occasionally my fingers would drift to the pendant at my throat or to Liam's wooden token in my pocket. Tangible connections to this new reality I'd stepped into. Before we'd parted, Liam had pressed his forehead against mine in what I now understood was a gesture of deep significance among his kind, the sharing of breath, of essence. "Call for me if you need me," he'd whispered. "No matter the distance, I'll hear you." The tunnel Nora chose emerged, as promised, much closer to my cabin, beneath a fallen oak whose hollow trunk concealed the exit. Dawn was just breaking as we surfaced, the forest painted in watercolor hues of pink and gold. "This is as far as I go," Nora said, scanning our surroundings with preternatural awareness. "The hunters may have returned by now." I nodded, suddenly reluctant to leave the safety of her company. "When will I see you again?" A smile softened her freckled face. "Sooner than you might think. We have ways of moving undetected." She clasped my hand briefly. "You're not alone in this, Mariah. Remember that." With that, she slipped back into the tunnel, pulling the concealed door shut behind her. Magic shimmered briefly as the entrance sealed itself, invisible once more to anyone who didn't know to look for it. I took a steadying breath and began the half-mile walk back to my cabin, rehearsing my story. I'd risen early for a walk, I would say. Needed fresh air after the stress of yesterday's interrogation. Nothing suspicious about that. As the cabin came into view, my steps faltered. 2 black SUVs were parked outside, and men in tactical gear patrolled the perimeter. My distraction hadn't worked as well as I'd hoped, or they'd called in reinforcements. Too late to turn back. One of the men had already spotted me, speaking urgently into his radio. I forced myself to keep walking at a steady pace, adjusting my backpack strap with deliberate casualness. Brennan emerged from my cabin as I approached, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Out for an early hike, Miss Reynolds?" I feigned surprise at his presence. "Officer Brennan, this is becoming a habit. Where have you been?" he demanded, ignoring my attempt at lightness. "Walking," I said, gesturing to the forest around us. Clearing my head after yesterday's excitement, his cold eyes assessed my backpack. "With supplies?" "Water, snacks, first aid kit," I replied. "Basic hiking essentials. My grandmother taught me never to enter the woods unprepared." "Your grandmother taught you many things, it seems," he said, voice dripping with suspicion. "May I see what's in the bag?" I hesitated, then shrugged and handed it over. I'd been careful to pack nothing incriminating. The herb box and Liam's token were safely hidden in the inner pockets of my coat. Brennan rifled through the contents, finding exactly what I'd claimed. Water bottles, energy bars, A basic first aid kit. His frustration was evident as he thrust the bag back at me. Interesting timing for a hike, he remarked. Especially given that 3 hours ago, my men reported wolf sightings in the western sector. I raised my eyebrows. And you think I had something to do with that? I was asleep at the time. Were you? His gaze was penetrating. No one saw you in the cabin when they checked. You were spying through my windows. I injected outrage into my voice. That's illegal surveillance. We had cause for concern, he countered smoothly. The safety of a young woman alone in wolf territory. How thoughtful, I said dryly. For your information, I sleep in the loft. The windows don't provide a view of it. This was true. A small mercy in my otherwise transparent cabin. The sleeping loft was the one area not visible from outside. Brennan's jaw tightened. Miss Reynolds, I'm going to be blunt. We know you're helping them. We don't yet know how they escaped, but we know you facilitated it. Them? I echoed innocently. The wolves, you mean? The ones you claim are something more than animals? Don't play games, he snapped. Your grandmother made the same mistake, thinking she could outsmart us. Look where that got her. The casual confirmation of her murder sent rage coursing through me, hot and cleansing. I stepped closer to him, dropping all pretense of confusion. Are you threatening me, Officer Brennan? Something in my tone made him blink. For an instant, just an instant, uncertainty flickered across his face. I'm warning you, he recovered. For your own good. Whatever you think you know about these creatures, whatever you think you owe your grandmother's memory, it's not worth your life. I held his gaze, feeling the pendant warm against my skin. Thank you for your concern. Now, unless you have a warrant for my arrest, I'd like to go inside my home. A tense silence stretched between us. Then, abruptly, he stepped aside. We'll be watching, Miss Reynolds, day and night. I'd expect nothing less, I replied coolly, climbing the steps to my porch. At the door, I paused, unable to resist a parting shot. You know what my grandmother used to say about people who spent their lives hunting monsters, Officer Brennan? His eyes narrowed. What? That they should be careful not to become monsters themselves. I smiled thinly. Have a nice day. Inside, I leaned against the closed door, heart pounding as adrenaline coursed through me. What had I done? Challenging Brennan so openly was dangerous, perhaps reckless, yet it had felt right, necessary even. If I was to be a double agent, I couldn't appear too compliant, too easily cowed. Through the window, I watched Brennan confer with his men. Several minutes later, they loaded into their vehicles and departed, all except two, who took up positions in the tree line. My watchers, as promised. The game had begun. Over the next 3 weeks, I settled into a strange new routine. By day, I played the role of diligent graduate student, visibly working on my thesis, taking regular walks, making trips into the small town for supplies, always watched, always followed at a discreet distance. By night, I explored my abilities as a keeper. It began with small experiments, using the pendant to sense the presence of my watchers, to hear their murmured conversations from impossible distances. I discovered I could create minor illusions, like the false wolves I'd conjured that first night. With practice, the illusions grew more substantial, more convincing. I found my grandmother's journals hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the loft. Dozens of them, spanning decades, detailing her experiences as a keeper. Her elegant handwriting guided me through meditation techniques to strengthen my abilities, recipes for herbal preparations that enhanced perception and protection. And most importantly, the journals contained maps, intricate diagrams of tunnel systems running beneath the mountains, connecting various safe houses and sanctuary points. My grandmother had spent years creating this underground railroad for werewolves fleeing persecution. True to Nora's word, I was not alone in my efforts. Messages began to appear, a symbol etched into frost on my window, a pattern of stones on my porch, once even a small origami wolf left on my doorstep, while my watchers were momentarily distracted. Each was a communication from Liam or his pack, using codes detailed in my grandmother's journals, information about hunter movements, warnings about new silver detection technology, updates on Eden's recovery. And with each message, My connection to Liam seemed to strengthen. Sometimes at night, as I drifted toward sleep, I could almost feel his presence, a warmth at the edges of my consciousness, a whispered touch against my thoughts. I'm here. We're safe. Be careful. I learned to respond, projecting my thoughts along the tenuous bond between us. It was like exercising a muscle I never knew I had, painful at first, then gradually easier, more natural. My watchers maintained their surveillance, but as days passed with nothing suspicious to report, their vigilance began to wane. Shifts grew longer, attention less focused. I documented their patterns meticulously, feeding the information back to Liam through our coded communications. Then, on the 23rd night, everything changed. I was awakened by the pendant burning hot against my skin, a warning. Instinctively, I reached for the connection to Liam, finding it vibrating with urgency. Mariah. Danger. The order is moving against us. Fully alert now, I slipped from bed and moved to the window. Unusual activity at the tree line, my regular watchers joined by new figures, all in tactical gear. Vehicle headlights approached in the distance, moving without lights. What's happening? I projected the thought toward Liam. They found another pack, captured one of them. Under torture, he revealed the location of several safe houses, including the hunting cabin. Horror washed through me. Are you safe? For now. We've relocated to the eastern tunnels, but the Order is mobilizing on a scale I haven't seen in years. Mass extermination campaign. I watched more vehicles arrive, disgorging armed men who gathered at the edge of the clearing for what appeared to be a briefing. Among them, Brennan's distinctive silhouette was unmistakable. They're gathering here, I informed Liam. At least 20 men, heavily armed. Can you get closer? Hear what they're planning? I bit my lip, considering. The pendant could amplify my hearing, but I would need to be closer. Much closer. I'll try, I decided. Give me a few minutes. Moving silently, I dressed in dark clothing and slipped downstairs. The cabin's rear exit, a small mudroom door seldom used and not visible from the hunter's position, would be my best option. I clutched the pendant, focusing my intent. Hide me from their eyes, make me a shadow among shadows. The familiar warmth spread through my fingers as the magic activated. I couldn't turn invisible. Keeper magic didn't work that way, but I could blur perception, make myself easier to overlook. Easing the door open, I slipped into the night. The air was crisp with early autumn chill. The forest floor carpeted with fallen leaves that threatened to crunch beneath my careful steps. I moved in a wide arc, approaching the gathered hunters from behind, using trees and undergrowth for cover. When I was as close as I dared get, perhaps 30 yards from where Brennan addressed his men, I pressed myself against a broad oak trunk and clutched the pendant again. Let me hear their words, carry their voices to me. The night sounds shifted, background noise fading as Brennan's voice suddenly became clear, as if he stood beside me. Largest operation we've undertaken in a decade, he was saying. Intelligence suggests at least 3 packs converging in this region, using an underground network of tunnels and safe houses established by the Blackwood Keeper. Murmurs rippled through the assembled men. Our primary target remains the northern pack, led by Liam Blackwood. A photograph was held up. Liam in human form, his silver-streaked hair and amber eyes unmistakable even in the grainy image. He's evaded us for years, but tonight that ends. What about the granddaughter? Someone asked. The new keeper? Brennan's voice hardened. Mariah Reynolds is a person of interest, but not our primary concern tonight. Surveillance suggests she's still feeling her way into her abilities, not an immediate threat. I almost smiled at the underestimation. We move in synchronized teams, Brennan continued, unfolding a map. Alpha Team will secure these 3 tunnel entrances. Beta Team will sweep the eastern ridge where we've detected thermal signatures consistent with shapeshifters. Gamma Team remains here to monitor the Keeper and prevent interference. My heart sank. They had thermal imaging technology, a serious threat to werewolves trying to hide, and they knew about the eastern tunnels where Liam had relocated his pack. Sir, a young hunter raised his hand. The new executive order authorizes lethal force for all confirmed shapeshifters. Does that include minors? A chill ran through me as I awaited Brennan's answer. The order is clear, he said coldly. Any shapeshifter capable of transformation is a threat to human security, and is to be eliminated. Age is irrelevant. Disgust and horror washed through me. They weren't just hunting adult werewolves, they intended to kill children, to commit genocide. I'd heard enough. Carefully, I began to retreat, intending to return to the cabin and warn Liam of the imminent attack. A twig snapped beneath my foot. Movement! 2 o'clock! A hunter called out, swinging a spotlight in my direction. I froze, clutching the pendant desperately. Don't see me. I'm not here. The light swept over my position, pausing momentarily. I held my breath, pressing against the tree, willing myself to blend with the shadows. After an agonizing moment, the beam moved on. Probably a deer, someone muttered. This forest is full of them. I released a silent breath of relief and continued my cautious retreat. Once safely beyond their perimeter, I abandoned stealth for speed, racing back to the cabin. I needed to warn Liam immediately. Inside, I reached for our mental connection. Liam. They're coming. They know about the eastern tunnels. They have thermal imaging. His response was immediate, tinged with alarm. How many? At least 20 that I could see. More arriving. They're splitting into teams to cover multiple entrance points. We need to move the pack again. The southern caves might... His thoughts cut off abruptly. I waited, panic rising when the connection remained silent. Liam? I projected desperately. Liam, can you hear me? Nothing. Something had happened. Something that had severed or blocked our connection, which meant a heavy knock at my front door made me jump. I knew before opening it who I would find. Brennan stood on my porch, flanked by 4 armed men. His expression was grim, triumphant. Miss Reynolds, he said, I believe you've been attempting to communicate with fugitives. That makes you an accomplice to their crimes. My blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about, he smiled thinly. You might be interested to know that we've developed technology that can detect keeper magic. Your little conversation just now registered quite clearly on our sensors. He held up a tablet displaying a pulsing waveform. Fascinating signature, almost like a radio frequency, but organic in nature. I said nothing, mind racing. If they could detect the magical communication, then they might have triangulated Liam's position when he responded. I'm placing you under arrest, Brennan continued, under the authority of the Supernatural Threat Containment Act. You'll be transported to a secure facility for questioning. On what specific charges? I demanded, playing for time. Harboring non-human entities, obstruction of justice, conspiracy against the United States government. His smile widened. The list is quite extensive. One of the men moved forward with handcuffs. I stepped back instinctively, my hand finding the pendant beneath my shirt. I wouldn't, Brennan warned, noticing the movement. Those dampening cuffs are specifically designed for keepers. Once they're on, your connection to your pets will be severed completely. The realization hit me with stunning clarity. They hadn't tracked Liam through our communication. They had captured him. That's why our connection had been cut so abruptly. Where is he? I demanded, abandoning pretense. What have you done with Liam? Satisfaction gleamed in Brennan's eyes. So you admit to your association with the shapeshifter Blackwood. Where is he? I repeated, fury building inside me. Being transported to our containment facility, Brennan said casually. Along with the female shifter, the younger one unfortunately resisted capture with particular vigor. Regrettable, but necessary. Eden. They had killed Eden. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow, grief and rage swirling together into something dangerous and wild. You murdered a teenage girl, I whispered. I eliminated a dangerous non-human entity, he corrected. Now, are you going to come quietly? Or do we need to use force? I felt something shift inside me. Something fundamental. The pendant burned against my skin, not with warning now, but with power. My grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. The pendant doesn't create magic, Mariah. It only focuses what's already within you. And what was within me now was righteous fury. Neither, I said quietly. Before Brennan could respond, I grasped the pendant and channeled every ounce of grief and rage into one focused thought. Protect. The effect was immediate and shocking. A wave of blue energy exploded outward from the pendant, throwing Brennan and his men backward off the porch. They landed hard in the clearing, weapons scattering. I staggered, unprepared for the drain of such powerful magic. But there was no time for recovery. I had to find Liam and Nora before they reached the containment facility. Running to my bedroom, I grabbed my backpack, already packed with essentials for just such an emergency. My grandmother's journals, the herb box, warm clothes, the wooden token Liam had given me. As I raced back downstairs, I saw Brennan and his men regrouping outside, calling for backup. My magical outburst had bought me minutes at most. I knew I couldn't escape through the tunnels. They would be watching those now. But there was another way. My grandmother's journals had mentioned emergency protocols, contingencies for when capture seemed inevitable. Reaching beneath my bed, I retrieved a small wooden box I'd discovered days earlier but hadn't dared to open. Inside lay a glass vial containing a swirling silver liquid and a note in my grandmother's handwriting. For the darkest hour, when all paths are blocked, think of where you need to be most, drink, and step through. Transportation magic, the most difficult and dangerous form of keeper ability. My grandmother's emergency escape route. Shouts from outside told me Brennan's reinforcements had arrived. No time for hesitation. I uncorked the vial and swallowed the bitter liquid in one gulp. Immediately my vision blurred, the cabin walls seeming to ripple around me. I need to be where Liam is, I thought desperately, wherever they're taking him. The wooden token in my pocket burned hot. The connection to Liam activating, pulling like a compass needle. I focused on that pull, that bond between us, and stepped forward. The world dissolved into silver light. When reality reassembled itself, I was standing in a sterile white corridor, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Overhead lights hummed softly, and the air smelled of antiseptic and fear. Somewhere nearby, an alarm was blaring. I pressed myself against the wall as armed guards ran past, not even glancing in my direction. The transportation potion must have brought with it a temporary concealment effect. Following the pull of the wooden token, I moved cautiously down the corridor. Signs on the walls confirmed my suspicions. I was in a government facility, specifically Section 7 of the Supernatural Containment Division. The token led me to a heavy metal door marked Holding Cell 12A. A small observation window revealed Liam inside, strapped to a metal table, silver restraints binding his wrists and ankles. His face was bruised, a cut above his eye seeping blood, but he was conscious, his amber eyes alert and defiant. In the corner of the room, Nora sat huddled in a similar cell, her arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. Grief for Eden threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it aside. Later, there would be time to mourn. Now, I needed to focus on freeing those who could still be saved. The door required a keycard. I had none, but I did have something potentially more powerful, keeper magic flowing strong with purpose and righteous anger. I placed my palm against the electronic lock, focusing my will. Open for me. Recognize me as authorized. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lock emitted a soft beep, and the door slid open. Liam's head snapped up, disbelief washing over his features as he saw me. "Mariah? How?" "No time," I said, rushing to his side. The silver restraints would be trickier. Touching them would harm me as well, though not as severely as they harmed him. Drawing on my grandmother's teachings, I whispered an incantation, passing my hands over the restraints without quite touching them. One by one, they snapped open. "Eden?" Liam asked hoarsely as I helped him sit up. I shook my head, unable to voice the confirmation he already knew in his heart. Grief flashed across his face, raw and devastating, before hardening into resolute fury. "We'll honor her later," he said, his voice thick. "Right now, we need to get Nora and escape." I moved to Nora's cell, repeating the process with her restraints. She was in worse shape than Liam. They'd clearly questioned her first, and not gently. She could barely stand, leaning heavily against me as I helped her up. "The facility will be locked down," Liam said, supporting Nora from the other side. Standard procedure for any containment breach. Then we make our own exit, I replied, remembering another spell from my grandmother's journals. But first, we need to ensure they can't track us again. In the center of the room stood a computer terminal, presumably containing records of their research on werewolves, locations of safe houses, and the detection technology Brennan had boasted about. I approached it, placing both hands on the screen. This would require more power than I'd ever channeled before. Liam, I said, I need your strength for this. Understanding immediately, he placed his hands over mine. Our connection flared, his life force flowing into me, mingling with my own. Together we focused on the technology before us. Destroy their research, all of it. Everywhere. Energy surged through us into the system. On the screen, data began to corrupt. Files deleting themselves, system architecture collapsing. But it didn't stop there. The magic spread through network connections, jumping to other systems, other facilities. Alarms blared with renewed urgency as the lights flickered and died, emergency generators kicking in with a low hum. Time to go, Liam urged, his face pale from the energy he'd expended. I nodded, turning to the outer wall. Stand back. Gathering the last of my strength, I pressed my hands against the concrete wall and whispered the words my grandmother had written in her journal, words of unmaking, of creating passage where none existed. The wall shimmered, then simply dissolved, revealing the night beyond. We were 3 stories up, but a conveniently sloped roof lay just below the opening. Can you both shift? I asked. It would make the escape easier. Liam nodded grimly. The silver's effect is already fading. Nora. She straightened, determination overcoming pain. For Eden. Before my eyes they transformed. Bones shifting, fur sprouting, human forms melting into wolf. Where Liam had stood, the silver wolf now crouched, amber eyes unchanged. Beside him, Nora's copper-colored form trembled but held steady. I climbed onto Liam's broad back, fingers tangling in his thick fur. Together, we leapt through the opening into the night beyond, Nora following close behind. We landed on the sloped roof, sliding to its edge, then jumped again to the ground below. Guards shouted, spotlights swinging wildly as the facility's security system struggled against the magical attack, still corrupting its networks. Liam ran with powerful strides, carrying me deeper into the surrounding forest. Behind us, the facility's lights flickered and died completely, plunging the compound into darkness. We ran for what felt like hours, putting miles between us and the containment center. Eventually, in a small clearing deep in unfamiliar woods, Liam slowed to a stop. Nora collapsed beside a fallen log, shifting back to human form with a pained gasp. Liam transformed more smoothly, catching me as I slid from his back. Exhaustion from the magical exertion hit me all at once, and my knees buckled. He caught me, lowering us both gently to the forest floor. Eden, he said softly, the single word containing immeasurable grief. I'm so sorry, I whispered, tears finally flowing freely. Brennan said she fought back, that it was necessary. She wouldn't have let them take her alive, Nora said, her voice hollow. She saw what they did to our parents, swore they'd never cage her. Liam's arms tightened around me. What you did tonight. I've never seen such power from a keeper. Not even your grandmother. It wasn't just me, I said. It was us. Our connection amplified the magic. He nodded slowly. The soul bond. It's stronger than I imagined. We sat in silence for a long moment, each processing the night's events. The escape had been successful, but at terrible cost. Eden was gone. My human life was over. I was now a fugitive, branded a traitor for helping non-human entities escape government containment. What happens now? I asked finally. Liam's eyes reflected the stars overhead. We run. We hide. We find other packs, warn them about what happened. The Order will be crippled temporarily by what you did to their systems, but they'll rebuild eventually. And then? A faint smile touched his lips. Then we fight back. Your grandmother began building a network. Keepers and werewolves working together. We'll expand it, strengthen it, create a true resistance. It won't bring Eden back, Nora said softly. Or Ellie. Or any of the others they've killed. No, I agreed. but it might prevent more deaths, and someday, perhaps, create a world where your kind doesn't have to hide. Liam's hand found mine, fingers intertwining. It won't be easy. The life of a fugitive is better than the life of a prisoner, I finished, or a collaborator. The first hints of dawn lightened the eastern sky, bathing the clearing in soft gold. A new day, a new life. What my grandmother started will continue, I said with quiet determination. The Order thought they could exterminate your kind, hunt down every last pack. Instead, they've created exactly what they feared most, a union between Keeper and Werewolf, magic and strength combined. Liam's amber eyes held mine, a promise in their depths. Together, then. Together, I echoed, sealing the vow. As the sun crested the horizon, I thought of the frozen wolves who had appeared at my door on that bitter winter night. Desperate, hunted, on the brink of death. I had opened my door to them, never imagining they were anything more than animals in need. Now I understood the truth my grandmother had known all along. Sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes family is found, not born. And sometimes the monsters in the forest are not the ones with fangs and fur, but the ones with badges and guns who hunt them. I had crossed a threshold, stepped into a world of shadow and magic, of ancient bonds and modern persecution. There was no going back, only forward, into whatever future we could carve from the wilderness of possibility. Liam's hand tightened around mine, the soul bond between us humming with shared purpose and growing affection. Nora stood, her grief temporarily channeled into resolve. We should move, she said. Find shelter before full daylight. I nodded, rising to my feet with Liam's support. The pendant hung warm against my skin, a reminder of my grandmother's sacrifice and legacy. The wooden token nestled in my pocket, no longer needed to find Liam, but kept as a symbol of the night that had changed everything. Together, we set off into the forest, 3 figures moving like shadows between the trees. A keeper and her wolves, fugitives, family. Behind us, Eden's memory would forever burn bright, a flame to light our way through whatever darkness lay ahead. And somewhere, I hoped, my grandmother was watching, knowing her work continued in ways she could never have imagined when she placed her silver pendant around my neck and whispered her final truth. The wolves have teeth, Mariah, but so do you.